Okay, something happened to my video. I'll have to check them and make sure, but this is starting again on number 6. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it did that. So I'm having to, I'll send you 2 videos for the review. Anyway, law of sines gives us a formula where if you've got 2 sides and the angle between, you can use this formula, 2 sides and the angle between. So none of these match. You've got the 2 sides and you've got the angle that doesn't match either one of them. So we would do 1/2 times 24 times 32 sine of 132. Make sure that your calculators are in degree mode. See? Make sure they're in degree. And the place you find that is you hit your mode key right there. See the mode? You don't hit graph. You hit that mode key right there. Okay, you hit it. Make sure it's in degrees. If it's not, you arrow down to it, go over, hit enter. Okay. Then we just do 1/2 times 24 times 32 sine 132. We round it to whatever we're asked to round it to, which on this, it is to the nearest tenth. So it'd be 285.4 centimeters squared. Okay, so that's number 6. Then number 7, we're having to solve x squared plus 28x plus 196 equals 3. I would actually work this like completing the square because this is a perfect square trinomial. This factors into x plus 14 all squared equals 3. Because the square root of 196 is 14. If I double 14, I get 28. So that's a perfect square trinomial. So then I can just square root both sides. So that'd be x plus 14 equals plus or minus square root of 3. And then subtract 14 from both sides. So x equals negative 14 plus or minus square root of 3. Now, you could definitely move the 3 over and subtract it. Then you would have to use quadratic formula. And you would eventually get here. Or you can work it this way. Then we've got a division problem on number 8. It is 48x cubed plus 72x squared plus 58x plus 7, and you're dividing by 8x. So you take that 8x, since it's a monomial, and you just put it underneath each term, and you simplify. And some of them may be left weird, like that 7 is going to be left weird. So this would be 6x squared plus 9x plus, oh, I wrote it wrong, guys. That should be 58x. That should be a 58x. So 58 over 8 reduces, I can take a 2 out of both of them, 29 over 4, and the x's cancel. And then just leave that as 7 over 8x. I know it's weird, but that's the way I want to see it, okay? That's the way I want to see it on that one. So that's number 8. Then number 9, you are supposed to classify negative 9x to the 4th plus 4x cubed minus 11x. I went ahead and combined like terms and put them in the correct order. So this is a trinomial. Why? Because it has 3 terms. This is a trinomial. It's to the 4th, so that is quartic. So you need to go back, you know, look at your, well, I'll just go over it right quick. 1 term is monomial. 2 terms, this is the number of terms, is binomial. 3 terms I just showed you is trinomial. And then 4 terms is polynomial. After 4 or more terms, we just call it a polynomial. Okay, then your degree. If it's a constant, that means your degree is 0. This is the degree. And it's just called a constant, okay? If your degree is 1, like 3x, then if it's a constant, like 8. Okay, this is linear. It's called linear. Then if it's 2, like 2x squared, that's quadratic. Then if it's cubed, like 3x cubed, then that is cubic. Then you've just seen quartic. And then if it's a 5th degree, it's called quintic. And we don't go any further than that. We don't go any further than a quintic, which would be something like negative 2x to the 5th plus x or something like that. But your biggest degree, your biggest exponent would be a 5, okay? So that's the way you do those. That's what's what on number of terms and how you label them, and then degrees and how you label them. Okay, make sure you put them in the right order too, like I did, and combining the like terms if you need to. Okay, then number 10, we've got y equals the square root of x minus 6. So we're supposed to determine the domain and range of each function. So the domain of this function, I can't have a negative underneath the radical. So that means x minus 6 has to be greater than or equal to 0. It can equal 0. I can take the square root of 0 at 0. I just can't take the square root of a negative. So this has got to stay 0 or positive, so x greater than or equal to 6. So my domain is x greater than or equal to 6. My range, a couple of different ways you can find it. I like thinking about it this way. This is the lowest x can be. So I'm going to put that in 6 minus 6, which is 0. So square root of 0 is 0. This is a positive. There's not a negative in front of that. So that means my range is y greater than or equal to 0. Look at it on a graph. If you don't believe me, look at it on a graph. So second square root x minus 6, graph it. If your graph does anything funky, go to zoom, go to number 6. You can just hit number 6, or you can arrow down to number 6, either one, or you can just hit the number 6, like that right there, and it fixes it for you. Okay, so if it's weird at all, zoom number 6 and it'll fix it. But as you can see, my range is all greater than 0 because it's up above the x-axis. So it's got to be positive, 0 or positive, okay? So that's why there's my range and there's my domain. Now, before we even find the inverse, because we're asked to find the inverse in the domain and the range of the inverse. If we're talking about the inverse, which we'll find it in just a minute, but I'm going to tell you about the domain and range first. The domain of the inverse is the range of the original one with an x, so it's x greater than or equal to 0. So you don't even look at your inverse, what the inverse turns out to be. You look at these two and you switch them. So your range for the inverse will be y greater than or equal to 6. So you're flipping the numbers. See, I flipped the 6 and the 0. I flipped the 6 and the 0, okay? But domain is always x and range is always y, so be careful with that. Now we do have to find the inverse. So that means we put x equals square root of y minus 6, and we solve. So we square both sides, so that'd be x squared equals y minus 6, and then add 6. So y is x squared plus 6. Okay, so that is number 10. Then on number 11, we are finding the roots, or solving them, finding the x-intercepts. So it's x squared minus 18x cubed plus 81x squared equals 0. And we want to give the multiplicity. So we want to see if they appear more than once. So first thing is we can take out an x squared. So that's going to be x squared minus 18x plus 81 equals 0. So then that's x minus 9 times x minus 9. Really, it's x minus 9 squared because it's a perfect square trinomial, because the square root here is 9. 9, and if I double it, I get 18. So one of my roots here is 0 with the multiplicity of 2. Why? Because it's x squared. And then x minus 9 squared. So one of my other 0 is 9 with a multiplicity of 2. Because you've got those squareds on there. If I wrote out x minus 9, I would have gotten 2 9s. So I would have 9 with a multiplicity of 2. So that's number 11. Number 12. Numero 12. You want one positive and one negative coterminal angle. So if you want the positive coterminal angle, you're going to add 360, and that would give you 418. If you want the negative coterminal angle, you subtract 360, which would give you negative 302. Real easy to find positive and negative coterminal angles. Add 360 for positive, subtract 360 for negative. Then on 13, okay, so we've got an exponential growth problem on here. We got rabbits, and that's number 13. Okay, so that's AT equals AO e to the KT. So we are told that at the beginning, at first there were 400, 3 years later there were 1,600. How many rabbits will there be after 10 years? So at first they tell us there's 400, so that's my AO. And I want to find the rate of growth. I want to find K. It says 3 years later, so after 3 years there were 1,600. So that's my AT, that's my after 3 years. And I want to find K, that's always the first thing I have to do. So I'm going to divide both sides by 400. That gives me 4 equals e to the 3k, and then I want to get rid of the e, so I do the inverse operation, which is taking the natural log of both sides. And we talked about this a lot. We did a lot of these. So ln e cancels. We're actually going to do a lot more as well. So ln 4 equals 3k, and then you divide by 3. And I always want 5 decimal places. I always want 5 decimal places. So type in natural log of 4, close parentheses, divided by 3, gives me 0.4620. Let's go ahead and leave it as 0.46209. I know there was an 8 after that 9, but let's leave it at 209 for that, okay? Now we've got to finish answering the questions. Now we want to know how many rabbits are going to be after 10 years. So we come back to the original equation. We want A10 because we want after 10 years. AO is still 400 because that's what we started with. E, now we know K. K is 0.46209, and we want after 10 years. So 400, remember how to find your E on your calculator. You hit second and the ln key, second ln key. That gives you that on the calculator. Then you put in your 0.46209 as your K, times 10, because we want after 10 years, and we get that. And so it's going to be about 40,634. About, this is an estimation, guys. This is an estimation. So we should get the same thing on the review, but on the test, depending on how, make sure you take K out to 5 decimal places, and then you should get close to what I want you to get. Okay, so that was number 13. Then number 14. Number 14, let's see. The student is choosing a 2-digit password. 2-digit password, just 2 places that we have to fill. Only the digits 1 through 8 are allowed, so 1 through 8 are allowed. And how many passwords are possible if the digits may not be repeated? They may not be repeated. So for the first one, I have 8 possible, because 1 through 8, that gives me 8 digits. So if I put 1 here, I only have 7 left for the second one. So that's 56 total. That's 56 total possibilities on that one. Then let's see, number 15. Number 15. Given f of x is negative 8x plus 4. So we want the sum. We want f plus g of x. So that means I take my f of x, which is negative x plus 4, and I take my g of x, which is negative 8x plus 8, and I add them up. I take my f function, my g function, and I add them up. So negative 16 plus 12. Negative 16x plus 12. Okay, there's 15. Then number 16, we've already done one like number 16, so skip number 16 because number 10 is like number 16, so we're not going to do overkill. So skip 16. And then 17, you're simply converting 125 to radian measure. Remember, pi over 180 or 180 over pi. If we want to go to radians, we use the pi over 180 because we want the pi to be there. And we want it to be a fraction, not a decimal. Do not use a fraction on here. So what you can do on your calculator is you can do 125 because it's on top divided by 180. Hit that and then hit your math. Enter, and it'll give you the fraction that you need. So it would be 25 pi over 36. Again, do not use decimals on ones like 17. Do not use decimals on ones like 17. Then number 18, the South Falls Waterfalls and Silver Falls, wow, that's a lot of falls, State Park in Oregon are 177 feet high. The equation negative 16 t squared plus 177 equals 0 gives a number of seconds it takes for the drop of water at the top to fall to the pool below. Okay, so they give us this equation. We don't have to change it at all. We want to solve the equation for t and round to the nearest hundredth. So a couple of different ways you can solve this. The way I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate the t squared, which is one option I showed you. This was one of the videos that we did. And I showed you about isolating that t squared. So we're going to do that, divide by 16. Now, here, do not figure out what 177 over 16 is. Leave it as 177 over 16 because you still have to take the square root. So for t, you want to do the square root of 177 over 16. You want to do the square root of 177 over 16. So you're going to type that in. Second, x squared, 177 divided by 16. It'll look like that right there. Hit enter. So around 3 point, we went to the nearest hundredth, so around 3.33. Around 3.33 seconds. Okay? So that's number 18. Then on number 19, it's a nice easy one. Changing 13 over 4 to a percent. So 13 divided by 4 is 3.25. So it'd be 325%. Because you started with 3.25, you move the decimal over twice, so 325%. Then for number 20, you want to evaluate log base 4 of 16. So, several different ways to do this. You could rewrite it exponentially and have 4 to the x because you want x. You want to know what this equals, okay? So 4 to the x, because this is your base, that's your exponent, that's your answer, which would obviously be squared because 4 squared is 16. Or you could rewrite it with the same base. So this could be log base 4 of 4 squared because 16 is 4 squared. And then log base 4, 4 cancel, and you're still with the x equals 2. You could have rewritten 4x equals 4 squared, and so x is 2. Lots of different ways to do that one. Okay. So that is your review. Again, the review and the test are both due this Thursday, the 9th of April. So there you go. And use your review on the test. Make sure you use the review on the test.